When you had peak anxiety, what was that like for you?
It was, like I said, it was almost like I had a gun to my head and that I knew any minute like the rug was going to be pulled out from under me. And I guess mostly the physical symptoms of the heart racing, the confusion, the confusion and the sweaty palms. And I would get like a dry throat, like to where I couldn't swallow. And that would make me panic even more because I'm like, oh wow, my throat's so dry, I can't swallow. And that would freak me out. So that's why I always carried a water bottle around with me, is because I couldn't swallow and I didn't like that. I think also just the fear of someone seeing me in that state of um because I worked part-time at Head Start, and I remember the group always loved going out to eat. And I used to love going out to eat, but when I was dealing with my husband and the panic and anxiety, they would say, "Okay, let's go to Applebee's." And normally I would love it, but it started to become of like I would make these little mental notes in my head like I got to sit by the door in case I need to leave. I got to have a water right there at the table right when I sit down. And even then with some of those things I would make it to the Applebee's, and I'd walk in, we'd be seated, and just the thoughts would start coming up in my mind of, oh, you're going to have a panic attack. Just thinking that I'm going to have a panic attack would bring on a panic attack. And then that was my exit, which I write that I started exiting life. Um, I would think of an excuse right there in front of my whole work group of, I got to go because I got call for my son's school. And so I'd make up all these excuses to get out of all these situations. So,
Well, I think that's something that like you could really tell it's a problem in your case because you're saying like, oh, I wanted to go so bad, but I like couldn't force myself to go, right? Like that's that's obviously an indicator that like something's wrong.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And, I luckily I had understanding family members who knew, and my best friend was well aware of my situation, so she would invite me. She's so sweet. She would invite me. She's like, let's go to a cafe. And she knew, she's like, if you need to beeline it out of there, well, you can leave. And she's like, we'll sit by the window. I'll get us a table by the window. And she really would. But of course, she's so accommodating and comforting, and I hadn't seen her in a while. I was at comfort and at ease with her. So, yeah, and I started realizing I'm doing this picking and choosing inside my head, which told me most of it was a choice. And I also came to realize that I had trained my body to these responses. So, as soon as I hit a street, um, that's by my street where I live by, it's like 5 minutes out. It was like clockwork in my head that the thoughts started racing and that my heart started racing. It was like, wow, I now I look back, I'm like, whoa, I trained myself somehow to go into that state of panic. And now, like I said, I use counteracting thoughts, and I get mad at myself when I start to doubt or something scary comes up in my head. And I use Byron Katie's she's a author, and I use her The Work. She has something called The Work, and you ask yourself, is it true? So I do that in times. I ask myself, is it true?
And so like
And
you'll have
you
like an anxiety thought and then you'll ask yourself, is
yes,
that true? Oh, okay.
yes. And that's been helpful. And yeah, so it's a different space. I mean, like I said, I still like you, have my comforts and like my comfort zone, but I do force myself to go places, and I enjoy meeting new people now, which in the past it wasn't comfortable, but and I just figure you get what you get. I am who I am. I'm pretty open, and I spent many years in shame and embarrassment just from being agoraphobic and just not it's not that I didn't like myself. I just wanted me to be more confident and more putting myself out there. And so I would say I had disappointment in myself. Now, if it's available, I will go. I mean, I can drive anywhere and I can meet with anyone. I mean, I'm meeting with you and it's not intimidating anymore. Like, but then I'm coming from the mindset of, others. Like I think of, oh, how will this impact others? How can I be that person that I was looking for when I had severe anxiety and agoraphobia? How can I help someone like that? And now I just want to give hope of, yeah, there's hope, and you can change. You can have a clear turnaround and be able to enjoy yourself and enjoy your life. And it just takes a lot of effort, I think, from my experience, a lot of effort, a lot of work, a lot of research, and a lot of just knowing who you are and knowing your authentic self and not being embarrassed about it, and realizing that you're your harshest judge. I mean, I judged myself more harshly than anyone outside of me ever did. And that's a lot of it, I realize, has come from my mother, because she's a perfectionist and very strict. And I realized from the time I was little, I wanted to make her proud and I wanted to be a lot like her, and I didn't want to make mistakes. And so I did find myself judging, and I look back and I have set the bar higher for myself, and when I didn't attain it, it was like really tragic, and really I beat myself up, which now I'm just proud of myself if I just try something outside my comfort zone. Like I didn't know if I could do ropes weekend, and it's an obstacle course you do, and it's quite a ways out there, and I was driving there at 8 a.m. and 8 o'clock in the morning, and about it's about an hour and 20 minutes away. About an hour into the drive, the old pattern came up of, what if it's too hot? What if you can't do this? What if you're not meant to do this? What if you get hurt? And then the old thought, my palms started sweating, and I told myself to shut up. I had to, and it kept going, and I said, shut the fuck up. And many times I had to tell myself that, and finally, and I yelled it to myself. I'm like, shut up. And I had to tell myself, and then I counteracted it with, you got this, you got this. And then I was there, and it's, once I get to the destination, I'm fine. It's like, okay, I'm here. I got this. And I did it. And it was something very meaningful to me. And I was proud of myself. And I realized if I can tackle that, there's a lot of other things I can tackle. And I am open to new experiences and new people. And I'm more comfortable with who I am at this point. I'm an author. I'm a Native American author. I'm, a lot of different things, and I'm happy about it, and I'm happy with myself. But I mean, this point too, like, guess this morning, I meditated to Wayne Dyer. So I do a lot of meditation, and I exercise. I do 30 minutes in the gym this morning. So I really had to change my diet. I know probably I didn't want to hear this when I had anxiety and agoraphobia about changing my diet, but there's certain things that were triggers to the way I was feeling. I limit my sugar, and I love coffee, but I don't drink coffee anymore because it was contributing to my stomach problems, the IBS. And I love beer, hoppy, dark German beer. And I realized that that was contributing to my anxiety and just my weight. So being aware and just learning to know who I am and what my body likes and what's good for my mental health and who's good to have around me, and changing my words of, I don't say responsible anymore, because that's a big weight. When I say, oh, I'm responsible for that, that is such a big weight to carry. Now I say, I have a choice. And then just knowing that, a choice, I have a choice. It lifts everything up, and it's so much lighter. So I do have choices, and I can say no now, where I never said no before. I was like the yes girl. Yes, I'll do that. Yes, I'll volunteer. And then I feel totally awful about it because I'm like, why did I raise my hand? I don't want to do it. And I thought, oh, it'll make me look better. It'll give me some power. And it's like, no, the power's already in you. So that's helped a lot.
I think going back to the diet thing, that was also like a huge shift for me, because I started listening to a lady named Rhonda Patrick, and she does a lot of studies on depression, aging, like just typical American stuff like diabetes. She does a lot of like diabetes too. But in her studies, basically she was talking about how she found like sugar is linked to depression, and then also a lack of vitamin D, and just like there's like some like vitamin D and omega-3 and like too much sugar consumption basically will help like cause depression. And I'm not saying that everyone's depression could be cured with, you know, their diet or something like that, but it's just like there's a heavy correlation, and there's probably a reason for that. And I think it sounds so obvious to us that, like, you know, yeah, maybe you should watch your beer consumption and you should watch your sugar consumption, and you should go outside sometimes, right? But when you're not really thinking that those two things are correlated, right, it just like you don't make that connection automatically. But it's like, yeah, when you eat a bunch of sugar, you feel like shit, so it probably makes your brain feel like shit when you do that too, you know, like. And so I think when I switched that, because now I'm like super conscious on how much sugar I'm consuming, because I do notice when I start getting depressive episodes, I'll crave sugar, and then I think it's just like a cycle. It just goes like cyclical for me. How did you get diagnosed?
Whose podcasts do you listen to?
Her name's Rhonda Patrick. She has her own podcast too. But I don't, so she has episodes on Joe Rogan's podcast, and those were the ones I listened to. Like, they're very intense though. She's gonna say a bunch of big words that you don't know, but I think just like hang in there, and you'll kind of, because she's using a lot of like scientific lingo, like she does the research, and so she just says a bunch of stuff, and you're like, wow, that's like way over my head. But I think as you keep listening to it, you kind of come familiar, or maybe you're like, okay, I don't know like all the intimate details on that, but I know like that she's referring to this thing, kind of, you know. It's like, and so okay, I kind of want to get to like how you got diagnosed, and then what your recovery is, because it sounds like you know, some of the spiritual awakening and you know, talking with the healers were kind of what healed you. But I want to get to your diagnosis first, because I think that's gonna be interesting.
Well, after my car accident, I did not feel like myself. It was like I was outside of my body. It was almost like I was in a bubble, and I was not myself. And I was pretty much living in hell. I would wake up and my heart would be racing and my throat would be dry, and I was dreading the day. I mean, I couldn't catch my breath right. I would walk to the corner and then panic and then come back, and and I didn't want to express that to anyone. I was
So
living
how
with my
long were you
mom.
living with anxiety before this? Like, because you keep talking about walking to this corner. Like, how long were you trying to walk to this corner for?
I know. It was the period between I from my car accident. I'd say 2009 until about 2012.
Okay, yeah.
So
that
like a
sounds
4-year period. I was pretty much confined to my house, and by 2012 I was like, I'm sick of this. I cannot do this. And actually no, 2011, because that's the culmination. I said I remember one day waking up and I wanted to go to my son's school so bad, and I just couldn't. I was like, I'm gonna have a panic attack there. I might have a panic attack driving there. So I forced myself to go to a school that morning, and I never drove. I never got out, but I made it to the parking lot, and his school was only like 7 minutes away. But I drove there, and I sat in the parking lot, and they hadn't seen me there, and it's a private school forever. And one of the ladies is waving to me, and she wants me to get out of the car. So I get out of the car, and she's like, we really need someone to watch the playground. I need to go to the bathroom. Can you watch? And my thinking was, oh, hell no. I'm going to die here. And she's like, I just need 5 minutes. But I'm like, oh my God, I cannot do this. But I said yes, of course, because I'm a yes person. So I get out, and I'm with like, what? It's like the whole second and third grade or whatever. There's like 40 kids out there. I can't bail. I want to bail. And it just was a surreal moment. I'm standing there watching the kids. The teacher runs off. I'm the only one out there with them. And it felt like I was melting into the pavement. I remember feeling so overwhelmed, and so I had shame that I even felt like that. I'm like, come on, these are kids. How could you not want to watch the kids? How could you not be able to stand here and watch kids? What's wrong with you? And just beat myself up. And then it just felt like a point, like I almost melted into the pavement. That's all I can. And then I was like stuck to the pavement in one spot. And I thought, this is not a life. This is not you. This is not who you were meant to be. You have to do something. Something has to change. And I'm like, I just want to hide. Like, if I were to really be melting right now, this is the weird thought. I want to just melt and hide inside the pavement and never come out. That was my thought. And I'm like, how pathetic is that? And then she comes back, and I'm like bolting out of there. And I go back home, and I write a letter because I felt so bad, and I felt so insignificant and so ashamed that I could even stand to be there with these loving kids on a bright sunny day. I felt empty and hollow inside, and I was like, how could a human being feel that empty and hollow and scared inside? It's not living its existence. So I got out a piece of paper, and I wrote, Dear Universe. And I begged the universe. I said, please help me. Please heal me. Because I don't want to live this way. I said, I want you to heal me, or please take me, because this is not the life I want to live. And I remember writing it, and I put it in a book, and I put it back on the shelf. And I went about my life. But then one day I woke up, and something was off. I was in this heightened awareness. I woke up, and I took the charger. I unplugged the charger from my phone, and the phone, I held the phone in my hand, and the battery blew up in my hand. And I was like, whoa. And then I was like, something's going on here. And I just felt surging energy all over my body. And I'm like, this is me, but it's not me. And I went to, I was able to go to the school to pick up my son for the first time. And it was just the strangest experience. I went into the chapel and I said to myself, it's like I could start talking to something, my higher self. And I said, is there a God? And like a picture was shown of me, and just a sense of feeling of religion was put here to keep people in order and to bring a sense of order to the world. But it's what you make it. And you have a blueprint that you agreed to before you came to Earth. And it told me there's an old Earth, a present Earth, and a new Earth. And it says you're existing in old Earth right now. But we're going to take you to the new Earth. So that's mind blowing. And I actually did a podcast on it on my Shell SilverSmith Spotify, where I talk about the whole experience. And so I left that, and it's like I was healed. I really felt like I had a reboot in my head and in my system, a system reboot, and mentally and even physically, because I had ailments. I had horrible eyesight, and after that experience, like, I have 20/20 vision.
What?
Yeah. So after that experience, and it was a 3-day process, the awakening, and at the end of it, I could see, and I write about this, how most people would be like, I'm healed, and they would probably take a trip to Cancun or something. My dream was to be able to walk inside a big box store. So you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, like Walmart.
The W store or the C store. And so, like, after my awakening, after that was over, the 3-day period, and I suddenly could drive anywhere. It was like that. It was instantaneous. I went to the big store, and I went to the very back, and I had no panic. And to me, that was freedom. It's usually where the computers are, where the printers are. I was like, whoa, I haven't seen this area in forever. This is what's back here. Because before, I could not go into a store like that. And if I did, it would be at the very front, just where the gum is. Mm-hmm. There's no way, because halfway back there, my heart would start racing, and I'd be like, I'm trapped, I'm stuck. Those were the thoughts that would loop in my head of, I'm trapped, I'm stuck, I'm not getting out. So,
So you never got diagnosed by a doctor?
I actually did. It was, it was before my awakening. I believe it was in 2010. I went to the doctor because I felt like I had waves in my stomach, like contractions. I think it was because I was so nervous, and he said my heart rate was really high and asked me if I drank energy drinks, and I said, no, I don't. And they're like, do you have anxiety? And I'm like, yeah, I have panic attacks and anxiety. And then they talked to me, and then I looked at my chart, and it said diagnosis, agoraphobia, panic and anxiety.
After you were reaching out to those quantum healers, did you feel more comfort with yourself? Like, did that help you heal, or was it mostly your awakening, do you think?
There were little increments of healing from them, but it wasn't the whole, I am whole now, which is more of the awakening. The awakening really brought on a sense of peace and a sense of wholeness. and actually healing, because at that point I felt like I needed a physical healing, because like I said, it was just like instantaneous. I'd walk somewhere to the corner or where I considered in my head were my boundaries, and just like that, my heart would start racing, or I'd start sweating. Yeah.
And so how do you try to think of this question, like, what's your encouragement for other people that are struggling with agoraphobia? Like, how would you recommend them to approach it and get to a point of healing?
Of course, the thing that you don't want to do when you're in that situation is go see a doctor. Like, that was the last thing I wanted to do, was be associated, because the hospital or the doctor's office, it almost felt like going there meant that I was sick, or I was going to get sick if I go there. So I really did not want to go there. And I had feelings also associated with death and dying when I went to the hospital or the doctor. And that came from my dad's diagnosis, because we went to numerous doctors and numerous hospitals when he was sick. So I associated that with death and dying. And so that was the last place I wanted to be, was inside a hospital or inside a doctor's office. But there was a point where I ended up there, and I think one of the things was a baby step of my doctor prescribing me Boost Bar, which is a low dose, supposedly non-habit forming anti-anxiety medication. So I took that, and also on the side he did give me low doses of Xanax for if I really had to travel somewhere. So for a while that was something I took, and it was almost like a Band-Aid. So it would help me for a while, but I still knew I had all these other issues. And now I think I would start at a doctor's office, even though you don't want to get there. Have a friend take you, and if medication's your choice, if that's an option for you, maybe you need to do that for a while, just to be able to get out to your therapist appointment. I found a good therapist. Her name's Sally, and she didn't come along first. There were others, and they would just tell me, the other ones would just tell me, oh, just get out there, don't just take every opportunity, without knowing. I can't, lady. Mm-hmm. I cannot do that. It sounds so easy, but it's not. You don't understand. And then I found Sally, and Sally was like, I'll come to you. So our first 3 visits, she came to my house. So I was able to trust her because she could come to me, and she came to me. And she was the one that figured it all out. Like, she was like, okay, your dad was the one when you hurt yourself, when you fell down from your wagon or scraped your knee, you ran to your dad, didn't you? And I'm like, yes. And she's the one that established that he was my comfort zone, my source of comfort, my source of love, unconditional love. And she said, so you really gravitated, and he was your security, your rock. And I'm like, yes. And she's the one that said, okay, when he left, your security was gone. Which is true. So therapy is important. And if you can't get out there, try to get someone to come to you.
Just to reiterate too, like, not every therapist is good, not every therapist is a fit for you, I think is a better way to put that, because it just like every other like realtor or whatever other like field, there's thousands of them out there, right? But there's only going to be like a handful that really click with you. And I think finding that person, because like my experience with therapy was, at first I really thought that it wasn't going to help me. I was like, there's no way therapy's gonna help me. Like, there's nothing they can do for me. It's what you make it, and having a good therapist makes it totally different. totally different. Oh, yeah. I think, because I went through several too.
A good therapist, find that one that resonates with you. And she gave me helpful resources. Like, she's the one who just introduced me to Byron Katie mm-hmm. and the work, and told me to watch YouTube videos on it, which I did. So I think yeah, if you need to get on medication, get on it. And if you can find a good therapist, find a good therapist. And I did something called inner childhood work. So I realized that a lot of my insecurities came from my childhood. So I think there are steps, and it's going to take work. I mean, it's not something that you can just think that you can do overnight. And I wish it was like that, but it's not. And just don't give up and find out who you really are. That's what my book is about. I want people to find out who they are to the core, and to be loving and accepting of themselves. And the negative self-talk has to go out the door, and it's something that you practice, and you counteract it with positive affirmations. But also, I'm like, when I talk to myself, I'm talking to the inner child. So I'm loving and kind yet firm. So that's been really helpful. And like I said, diet and exercise, I didn't think that was very important, but it is to me. So it's a lot of work, but you have to start somewhere.
Yeah, I think like just applying anything you can until stuff starts sticking, right? That's probably like the best thing. But it seems like spirituality also played a huge role for you. I mean, what's your book about? Is it more just your story, or is it about healing? Or give us a teaser.
It's a nonfiction. It's called Finding My Sacred, and it will be out November 1st. I'm so excited. I get to see the cover this week, and we were able to take some pictures. I sent you some pictures, and the photographer was wonderful. His name's Samuel. And yeah, I'm just excited because it's all coming along. And I have a website. It's in process. We were waiting for the pictures in order to get the website up and going, but that will be at shellsilversmith.com. And yeah, the book comes out November 1st. So I'm doing various podcasts and just trying to, like I said, I think the book will find the people it's meant to read it. And yeah, and it's 11 years in the making, so it's not something I wrote overnight. And it goes through the beginning of being with the priest in my confession, and it talks a little bit about my childhood, and then my grandparents, who are wonderful. They've all passed, but they left an imprint in my heart. And then it goes on about my father and my battle with anxiety and agoraphobia, and then the spiritual awakening, and just what I've been doing from there on, and just the whole process of trying to heal and find my authentic self. There's some surprises in there, but I'm not going to reveal them.
Yeah, keep
your
secrets.
It. I know you'd grill me on them. But look, on November 1st, Finding My Sacred, it will be in paperback, hardback, and I'm intending to have the Audible done by then too.
Okay. Well, maybe we could have a follow-up interview and I could grill you then.
You will, and you will grill me about it. I know it.
I want to thank you for listening to this podcast. If you are interested in being on the podcast, please email cartherapypod@gmail.com.